Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first here, fire danger chart with the rain that's come in over south central Alaska. Under high now for the first time in quite some time, anywhere from with the wetting and in some cases soaking rains that came in overnight last night and this morning. Now tapering off, that's reduced it. Now the only area left here is narrow band there in the Copper River Basin, right along the valley there. Had some rain over in that area too. May Creek picked up 1/10 of an inch of precipitation today, which is enough to be called a wetting rain, and Paxson also about 2/10 of an inch there. So it's kind of narrowed there from what it was yesterday, and that's the only remaining area of high or very high fire danger left around the state. Moving on to the satellite imagery, here's this first band you can see dissipating as it moves northeastward and hanging together here as it pushes off to the east. That brought the rain into the eastern Alaska range, and in some cases even some showers north of the range there. But back to the west and northwest, very light amounts, scattered precipitation. And not too bad on up to the Arctic coast. A little breezy on the eastern Arctic coast today with winds gusting 30 to 35 miles an hour out of the east and northeast. And that held temperatures down through most of the afternoon, at least into mid-afternoon, to the 36 to 40 degree range up there. And less wind as you get to the central coast and the west side. And we have this big storm coming up here as that frontal boundary stands out quite vividly on the satellite here, back edge of which, let me get that rolling again, right through here, and that bringing fairly strong winds and heavy rains to some areas. AKwx picking up nearly 3 inches of rain in the last 24 hours with this storm there, with winds gusting as high as 56 miles an hour at AKwx there as that came up. Winds gusted about 50 miles an hour at Unalaska till the front went through there, and they had almost 1 1/4 inches of precipitation. Cold Bay gusts 60 miles an hour out of the southeast there, with just under 1 inch of rain falling with this system. And front has yet to pass Cold Bay, so you may see even higher wind gusts here before that happens, especially with the low center starts tracking slowly northward. So that'll add a little bit of forcing to those wind speeds, and winds kicking up along the southwest coast as well. 40 to 45 mile an hour in the exposed areas there. Cape Newenham has so far had a gust 43 miles an hour, while Platinum 45 miles an hour. And rainfall just about ready. If it hasn't already, it's just about to make landfall here in those areas and to Nunivak Island probably in the next hour or so. Gusty winds, rain, Pribilof Islands, St. Paul gusts 45 or 40, 50 miles an hour wind gusts there. A little bit of a break farther to the west, but over the southeast coast, not bad again today. A few clouds down over the southern areas, but still partly and mostly sunny elsewhere. Starting to see some increase in the clouds here, mostly toward Elfin Cove area, and the remnants of that will move by this evening with probably not much in the way of any precip at all left in it by the time it does. And moving to the analysis for today, here's the trough breaking up this afternoon, mostly just showers now. Still some areas of rain up along the Alaska range of steady variety, but it basically becoming more showery and ending elsewhere, and even less of that west of the Alaska range, just clouds there with some showers out to the Seward Peninsula, over the Yukon Delta, and fair amount of clearing up to the north here, the Brooks Range down into the Koyukuk, Kobuk, and Yukon Valley areas, and just about down into almost Tanana Valley, seeing a little bit of sunshine today, back up to the northwest coast there, or back up to the far western Arctic coast, skies clearing with that easterly offshore wind flow going on there. And fog, not really much of a problem at all today, just kind of a lower cloud deck in areas of the along the Arctic coast. And out to the west, you see the tide gradient associated with this out ahead of the front here, across the Alaska Peninsula, bringing those 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts there, and that just reaching the southwest coast late this afternoon. And rainfall, again, pushing up to the northeast with this, and really strong winds there back along the backside of this system. As I mentioned, anywhere from, I think so far, AKwx had a 56 mile per hour wind gust and still was carrying moderate rain into the afternoon, even on the backside of this low center. And then back to the west, really tapers off, just some light rain, drizzle, fog, and lighter winds out toward Chimianatu. For tonight, this low center slowly pulls northward and the front pushes eastward, so rain and wind into Kodiak Island. Could be some moderate to briefly heavy amounts of rain in the upslope areas of the mountainous terrain, the Aleutian Range, maybe even the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Mountains. Would see the heavier precip amounts with this, and then rain on the increase again, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet. Easterly flow, easterly winds starting to pick up as well with the high center here right over Yakutat and the gradient there. Look for a pretty good increase in the winds here over the southwest interior, especially the western Alaska Range. I could see gusts anywhere from 35, maybe as high as 50 plus miles per hour in the windier areas. Otherwise, northern interior, that trough washes out completely here. Just maybe a few lingering showers over the eastern Alaska Range after midnight and in toward morning, with mostly fair conditions here from central interior. And then cloudy, possible fog, and of course staying windy on the eastern Arctic coast, breezy there, but fog, whatever develops, shouldn't be much of a problem at all. And the Panhandle just variably cloudy there, high pressure, light winds, high pressure ridge just off the coast, but you'll get some of that cloudiness moving through associated with that dissipating trough that's just now coming into the scene. And for tomorrow, Sunday, back to the partly to mostly sunny day there for the Panhandle, with the front bringing the wind and rain. South central Alaska could see gusts higher elevation south central Alaska could see gusts 60 miles an hour. Turnagain Arms, same thing, could see 60 mile an hour wind gusts. Rain returns also back up into Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska, less on the lee side of the mountain ranges. But places like Alyeska, you could pick up maybe, I don't know if you'll pick up another ½ inch of rain like you had today, but you could. Definitely Portage and Whittier, more likely. Rain in Seward with gusty south winds, and quite windy here over the southwest interior. And also the eastern Alaska Range, central eastern Alaska Range, west of the Toe Cutoff, could see gusts as high as 60 miles per hour during the day tomorrow and into tomorrow evening as the front and the system begins to lift northward. Otherwise, north of the Alaska Range, don't look for much in the way of any precipitation at all. Still could see some sun breaks here, actually all the way up to the North Slope and possibly even the Arctic coast. It should be a day much like today up there. For the most part, basically dry with the strongest winds in the 30 to 35 mile an hour gust ranges for the eastern areas. And again, light winds. This shower activity will remain east of the southeast coast. Northwest winds gusting maybe to 40 to 50 miles an hour here across eastern Aleutians, with showers along with those, with each passing trough here. And taking a look at the Monday outlook, that low weakens slowly, lifts northward, and a trough brings another round of precipitation and gusty winds into the southwest interior across Kodiak Island and into Cook Inlet, but won't be as strong as the original front, which is at this Monday afternoon pushes into the northern Panhandle, breaks through, but stays dry down to the south. But a pretty good chance of rain, northern Panhandle, Juneau on out to especially Yakutat, Elephant Cove, maybe even the Klondike Highway. Mostly cloudy, just isolated showers north of the Alaska Range over the eastern interior areas, and generally westerly flow, pretty breezy over the Bering Sea. But also look for some clearing, drier air in that westerly flow here over the Aleutians. Could result in some sunshine. Next system pretty weak, spread some warm front rains in toward the west central Aleutians. Lows for tonight in the 30s here over the northeast and eastern interior areas. In the lower 50s, much milder over the southwest to the coast, and mid 50s for the Alaska Peninsula. Highs for tomorrow, maybe pushing towards 70 in the greater Fairbanks area and Susitna Valley, lower to mid 60s, maybe a little warmer, and 60s for Bristol Bay, 60s for the Panhandle. Looking for your lows for Monday morning. A little bit below freezing, but milder here over the eastern interior than you will be Sunday morning. Lows staying in the lower 40s here, mid 40s Copper River Basin. Upper 40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast, upper 30s eastern Arctic coast to lower 40s on the west side. Lows in the mid-50s there for Kotzebue, and lower 50s Seward Peninsula, lower to mid-50s right across the Yukon Delta areas, followed by highs 65 to 71 in the Tanana Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic Sunday morning, IFR here, shifting into the eastern Bering Sea across the Pribilof Islands to the north shores of the Unmak and Unalaska Islands. Also some marginal with areas of IFR scattered around and some VFR scattered around the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Good VFR over the interior, except lower conditions along the western slopes of the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and some IFR there from Kamishak Bay down across the Barren Islands east side of Kodiak. And then for the afternoon, shaping up like this, VFR for the southeast coast over to Yakutat, and IFR, Prince William Sound there, kind of getting socked in on the western Prince William Sound zone, Passage Canal, east side of the Kenai Peninsula on down to Kodiak. Marginal VFR again, could be some IFR too on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. VFR, central eastern interior, some IFR central Arctic coast, IFR from the Bering Strait there in Wales down to St. Lawrence Island, right up along the southwest coast, Pribilof's IFR, much of the Bering Sea actually IFR, as well as the Aleutians. And shifting into Monday morning, we've got less in the way of VFR, but still a fair amount here over the central and northern interior up to about the Brooks Range, and then conditions deteriorate out toward the Arctic coast. IFR, Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound there, right up into southern Cook Inlet and the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, mostly the southern area there. Otherwise, marginal Bristol Bay, isolated IFR, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula. Gets more widespread here over the Aleutians, and mostly IFR for the Bering Sea. Southeast coast, we got some IFR slipping on up into the southern areas here from roughly near or just south of Cape Edgecombe, or Mount Edgecombe, all the way into across the southern Panhandle, Prince of Wales Island, over towards Stewart and Hyder, with areas of VFR to the north over the remainder of the southeast coast. And in the afternoon, IFR all along the southeast coast here. Some marginal VFR over the inside waters, and also some VFR over the southern areas. VFR, Northern Copper River Basin, Upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country into the central interior, back to the northwest. North slope looking pretty good with the IFR hanging just off the Arctic coast, and marginal VFR over the western interior here with IFR, again from St. Lawrence Island, right on down the Yukon Delta coast, and it looks like trying to push up into the Bethel area. Marginal for the Alaska Peninsula, and some IFR, more IFR there for the southwest Bering to about Atka Island, and then extending westward. Passes Anatufik and Adigan both look pretty good tomorrow with VFR in the forecast. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, we've got IFR becoming marginal in the afternoon, and that same trend for rainy as well. Better conditions in the afternoon, less in the morning. Windy, pretty much VFR the entire day. Chance of some marginal VFR at times on the southern approach. That moisture may stay just a little bit farther to the south. Isabel, marginal VFR. Mentasta, though, VFR. Tanita, marginal. And Portage, IFR in the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal. And Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 8 to 10,000 feet here across southwest interior, about 12,000 feet there near Kodiak, 10,000 give or take there for the southeast coast, and roughly at about 8,000 feet over the northern central interior, 6,000 feet over the Bering Sea. Icing, a lot of moisture coming in again with that big storm pulling up into the, or out here to the west, so areas of considerable moderate rime icing. Above about 9,000 feet here for the Gulf of Alaska and Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Could be some enhanced areas here due to the terrain, Aleutian, Western Alaska Range areas. That could result in considerable moderate above about 7,000 feet with icing possibilities all the way up into the Seward Peninsula area in the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. Jet stream, here's that low, upper low associated with the surface storm pulling northward. We've got southerlies 120 knots coming into Kodiak Island, kind of splitting then with a weaker branch 50 knots out of the southeast there across the western interior, basically ridging, continuing Gulf of Alaska, southeast coast up into the interior, and looking at 9,000 feet. Here's that big storm coming up off the southwest coast there. And pretty good winds as high as 60 knots out of the southeast coming across the western Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, 50 knots Kodiak, lighter for the Panhandle, and 3,000, about the same pattern, 40, 50 knots south to southeast winds over the southwest interior. Translates into considerable moderate chop here below 5,000 feet over much of southwest Alaska, Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians.
It used to be that you could only warn one person about a tornado after it had already blown down someone else's barn.
Now, on average, we're able to issue a tornado warning 15 minutes before the tornado's even there, and that wouldn't be happening without Doppler radar.
This NexRad system has reduced fatalities on the order of 45% due to tornadoes since its advent.
We have a lot more information now about storms and being able to understand how they develop, how they produce severe weather, and how that information might be used to improve warnings for our National Weather Service partners.
The lab is unique in that we serve the nation by supporting the National Weather Service in its mission to protect lives and safe property by improving the accuracy and the lead time of severe weather warnings.
We have a legacy of radar research and converting existing technology from military to weather purposes.
A recycled Doppler radar led to the development of NexRad, installed nationwide in the early 90s. It allowed forecasters to see storms like never before.
Not only did we help bring that technology to the National Weather Service and to help protect lives and property, but we have continued to upgrade that technology, keep it relevant, and keep it state-of-the-art.
Recently, a major upgrade was added. Dual polarization technology takes the radar from 2D to 3D. Forecasters now know more about what type of precipitation is falling, which is very helpful during winter storms, as well as how much rain is accumulating, resulting in better flash flood warnings. The radar can also detect and track tornadoes based on debris. Looking to the future, the National Severe Storms Lab is testing the capabilities of phased array radar. Originally used by the U.S. Navy, the antenna scans the skies electronically rather than mechanically, allowing the radar to focus on a storm.
With current technology, we get a full picture or image of what is going on within a storm every 4 to 5 minutes. So it's more like a snapshot. Whereas with phased array radar, we get that picture of what's going on in the storm every minute. So it becomes more like watching a movie. So we can do adaptive, rapid scanning on the storms that matter most, being able to provide the information that's most relevant when and where it's happening.
Another advantage of phased array radar is its multifunction capability, providing weather and air traffic information simultaneously.
Number one, it is a system that promises to replace and expand upon the existing weather surveillance radars. Secondly, to replace aging air traffic surveillance radars. And number three, it offers a potential application to meet Department of Homeland Security and defense requirements for identifying and tracking non-cooperative aircraft. With the replacement of all these various radars with a single system, the American taxpayer could realize substantial savings in cost.
You have a lot fewer radars to maintain, and the electronic capability of this also reduces maintenance costs because you do not have moving parts.
Not too long ago, the ability to predict severe weather was thought to be impossible. During the past several decades, research conducted at the National Severe Storms Lab has developed life-saving tools like Doppler radar. We've progressed from no warning of threatening weather to about a 15-minute lead time, and current research promises to extend that much further.
Our knowledge of severe storms and how they behave And our use and ability to use the Doppler radar technology is in a lot of cases a direct result of that close working relationship, that research to operations component that we get between the National Severe Storms Laboratory and a forecast office.
That history and understanding of how these data can be used by our users and doing the research to help advance the use of radar technology, really it's what we live for, it's in our lifeblood, it's in our history.
It's now easier than ever to be a part of weather research. We just launched the MPing app for both iPhone and Android users, and it's totally free. PING, which stands for Precipitation Identification Near the Ground, is a research project by the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab and the University of Oklahoma. With the mobile app, you can send us your weather observations on the go. Are snowflakes falling on your head? Is hail hitting your car? Just select what type of precipitation is falling and press submit. It's that easy. It takes about 5 seconds and it's anonymous. Reports can then be viewed online. Our scientists will compare your report with what the radar has detected. This helps us develop new radar technologies and techniques. Download the app today, share your reports, and let's work together to make our nation weather ready. Learn more here and follow us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at Saturday's sea ice analysis, recently finished. Not much change from yesterday. In fact, I really couldn't see any difference. Still way off the coast here and not expected to change a whole lot over the next couple of days. And for the coastal water forecast here, look for west winds, 10 knots on the south coast, seas 4 feet. Becoming south here as you head north and then southeast at 15 on the extreme north coast there with seas still at about 4 feet. Inside waters, central and southern areas. Northwest basically at 10 knots with slight seas, and Lynn Canal light southerlies at 10 knots. Then Monday, look for those to increase. Small craft advisories for Lynn Canal in the forecast for Monday with seas building to about 5 feet or so. Southeast 15 for Stevens Passage, southeast at 10 for Clarence Strait. Out along the coast, southerlies 15 to 20 knots here on the south coast and southeast 25, so small craft advisories on the north coast. And then those seas coming up to 12 feet. For Cook Inlet, north of the Forelands, northeast 20 knots, seas 5 feet. South of the Forelands, small craft advisories, northeast 25 knots. Got gales for Kamishak Bay out of the southeast, minimum gales at 35, but those seas building to 16 feet. Southeast 30 knots here for both the Barren Islands and the western North Gulf Coast, or actually all of the North Gulf Coast. Southeast 30 knots with the seas here 7 feet in the eastern zone, build to about 8 feet here in the western zone, then up to 11 feet for the Barren Islands and Prince William Sound. Small craft advisories, east winds sustained 25 knots with seas up to 6 feet. And then those turn southeast 25 for Monday with seas at 7 feet now. And southerlies 30 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast, 10-foot seas. South 25 for the western North Gulf Coast, small craft advisories again for the Barren Islands, and southerlies 25 knots, seas coming down to 10 feet there for Kamishak Bay. South 25, southern Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, south coming down to 15 knots, seas at 4 feet. Kodiak Island, south to southeast tomorrow at about 30 knots with 8 to 13-foot seas. Gales here for the Alaska Peninsula, south 35 to 40 knots. Bristol Bay, southeast at 40, seas 9 feet. And Castle Cape to Sitkinak, minimum gales at 35 knots from the south, but seas up to 23 feet. 40-foot seas here on the Pacific side of the Alaska, or I'm sorry, 30-foot seas on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. And for Monday, west winds for the peninsula here, Still gale force on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, seas at 16 feet. Otherwise, east westerlies at 30, turn southwest 30 from Castle Cape right up across Kodiak Island, and southwest 30 knots in store for Bristol Bay. Fox Islands tomorrow, west-northwest 35 to 40 knots, sustained with seas running anywhere from 16 to 26 feet. And for the central Aleutians, west-northwest 35 knots, seas 17 to 15 feet, and then winds gradually diminish but stay at small craft advisories all the way out to Shemya with 9-foot seas. And then for Monday, we'll see the western zone here drop below small craft advisories, both wind-wise and sea-wise, with seas down to 6 feet. Southwest 25 west of Adak, Mchitka and Kiska area there. Central Aleutians, southwest 25 with 8 to 9-foot seas. And lighter winds under gale force, at least here for the Fox Islands, west-southwest 25 to 30 knots. Southwest coast tomorrow along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. We're looking at winds from the southeast, gale force 35 knots, 12-foot seas. Northwest 25 for the Pribilofs with 9-foot seas. North 30, St. Matthew Island, seas 11 feet. East winds there along the Yukon Delta coast at 30 knots. Northeast 25 for St. Lawrence Island. Even stronger, Norton Sound, east at 30 with 6-foot seas. And that holds through Monday as well. Northeast 25 also for St. Lawrence Island. Southwest 30 to 35 knots with a gale south of Nunivak Island. West 35 knots for the Pribilofs with seas at 14 feet. West 30, St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort, or the central and east coast, or central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, we've got east winds at 35 knots, 10 to 11-foot seas there. Small craft advisories on the west side, and also from Wales up to Cape Thompson, east at 25. And that'll be followed by a little bit lighter winds in the central coast, still at 30 knots, gales on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and small craft advisories here from Wales up to Cape Thompson. For tonight, again, big storm coming northward here. Gusty winds anywhere from 40 to 60 miles an hour coming in, even south central Alaska winds on the increase. And that front moves inland tomorrow and weakens. Pretty windy over southern Alaska, wet out in the southwest, and into the Panhandle the next day.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.